Mr. Crack, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowers. Present. Mr. Dalton.
Jeremy? No, we must have lost him.
Okay, we'll try again. Ms. Dugan.
Here.
Mr. Richter. Present. Mr. Kuznar.
Present.
Ms. Mayo.
Here.
Mr. Perednik.
Here.
Mr. Kowaleski.
Present.
Mr. Mayor.
Semper Fi.
Manager, solicitor, chief are here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. What is council's pleasure with item 3?
I'll make a motion to approve the January 13, 2015 minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Perednik, second by Mr. Bowers. On the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I will note that we now have Mr. Dalton on the line. Mr. Crack, do we have any presentations this evening?
We do not.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, public participation. I'll open up the first round of public participation, invite residents and other individuals to come forward. When you do so, please identify yourself, identify whether you're a borough resident, please sign in, and please keep comments to 5 minutes.
Good evening, members of Borough Council, Council President, Mayor. Question regarding under policy F2 regarding public hearings. My understanding, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but my understanding is we're going to cut back on the amount of public hearings. I think the understanding being that the state borough code only requires them to be held on zoning issues. Right now, they're held on more than just zoning issues in the borough. But is there going to be an enumeration of what other issues it will be held on, or is it going to be changed to only zoning issues? Because I think it might be cutting a little bit too deep to eliminate. I can see why you might want to eliminate public hearings on a handicap sign, something like that. But there are other issues where public hearings are held where I think it calls attention to the item and allows, kind of flags it for the public to be aware that perhaps they might want to address that issue. So I don't know whether to take an answer from, or take an answer to the floor, or at how to handle this, Mr. President. I think it ought to be broadened a little bit to other types of hearings, or, you know, I can see the minutia hearings, but if there's other types of hearings coming up that affect, you know, public properties or parks or things of that nature that had hearings in the past, I'm not sure. Does the borough code policy spell out what public hearings are held right now? I was trying to find it, but I really couldn't.
I believe we're going to discuss this later when the proposal comes up under the policy section. So I'm not sure I follow your question as far as.
I was trying to find a list of just what do we now hold public hearings on.
There is, I don't believe that Phoenixville Borough has a list. It's just been the policy that any ordinance was
Any ordinance
was a public hearing.
All right, so, and we're allowed to, I believe, add to the state code, are we not? I mean, the state code says you must do it for zoning, but you can have it for other items, correct?
I don't know if it goes that far. I think there's no prohibition against it.
All right. Then I think when you discuss that, there ought to be public hearings allowed on other issues than just zoning. As important as zoning and planning, all that is, I think it should be allowed to include, required on other items. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Colarusso. I'm here in case there's any questions. I have an application that was reviewed by the HARB, and it's for the placement of a Better Homes and Gardens real estate office on Bridge Street. We need to make some modifications to the facade, and I just think it's, it's consistent with the development of the downtown and putting, feet on the street during the day. And if there's any questions in the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Colarusso. Seeing no further public participation, we'll close the first round of that and move on to item 6, appointments and public resolutions. Mr. Crack, do we have any openings currently on the committees and boards?
Of course, it didn't print it. Currently, there is a position that opens in March on the Planning Commission. There is now a resignation effective the end of this month on the Zoning Hearing Board. There is a opening on the Recreation Board, which will come up in April. On HARB, there is an opening that will come up in August. Beautification currently has 1 vacant, and 2 persons, their term expiration is in October of this year. And we still have an alternate position available on the Civil Service Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Crack. I'll make my monthly plea or request to the citizens of the borough that if you're interested in serving on any of the board commissions or committees of the of Phoenixville Borough, that you reach out to your council person and or reach out to the borough or investigate. I believe we have the information up on the website as well. With that, we'll move on to communications and council participation. Mr. Bowers.
Thank you, Council President. Would just like to highlight that the Phoenixville Youth Babe Ruth Leagues are holding their registrations. The Cal Ripken Division, which plays at Vic Moras Field, also known as Pico Field, is holding registrations on Sunday, February 15th, February 22nd, and March 1st between the hours of 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. And also the Babe Ruth Division, or I should, excuse me, let me step back. The Cal Ripken Division offers baseball, t-ball, baseball, softball for ages 4 through 12 for boys and 4 through 16 for girls. Also, the Phoenixville Babe Ruth Division, which offers baseball for boys age 13 to 15, is holding registration on February 14th, 21st, and 28th between the hours of noon and 2 at DeSanto Field. DeSanto Field is between Mason and Wheatland Streets, just above the Superior Beverage. So,
Thank you, Mr. Bowers.
Thank you.
That reminds me to sign up my daughter for t-ball. Mr. Kuznar.
I hope this is the appropriate time to be doing this. I spoke with Ms. Mayo after speaking with several residents on Mill Street, and they had they seem to be requesting that their block be permitted. So I would here be the place where we would schedule a parking and steering committee meeting to advertise, or I know that's your committee, so.
Yeah, Gene I can't remember when we had those before. It was just whenever we needed them. It wasn't like a second Tuesday or something like that, was it?
We did adhere to a, I want to say like the 4th Thursday of
Okay.
whatever month we had, but to your point, they've been ad hoc, typically 1, 2, sometimes 3 in a year, but we haven't had one in a year.
Yep.
So if you did decide to have bring the committee back to further discuss, I would schedule it for the same time and day of the week that they're accustomed to.
That's fine. Thank you.
And if you wanted to, I mean, we could just do the study, but if that's the process you like to go through, then we could do that too and invite the members to come and speak, whether they're for or against it.
I believe that's a direction to schedule that, so that would be for the fourth Tuesday of this month, is that what? Fourth Thursday, which would be the 26th.
Let me just double check. 26th, yes. At, what did we do, 6:30, I believe?
So we'll advertise that in usual channels. Thank you, Mr. Kuznar. Seeing nothing further, we'll move on with the agenda. New business. Seeing no new business, we'll move on to resolutions. What is council's pleasure?
I'd like to consider the approval of a resolution acknowledging John Bud Herency for his years of service on the zoning hearing board.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Prednick. I'll give that to Mr. Bowers. On the motion, I will read the proposed resolution. A resolution of gratitude for the public service of John Bud Herency as a member and past chairman of the Zoning Hearing Board for the Borough of Phoenixville, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Whereas John Bud Herency served diligently and honorably as a member and former chairman of the Phoenixville Zoning Hearing Board through January 2015. And whereas John Bud Herency provided invaluable service to the Phoenixville Zoning Hearing Board during that time. And whereas Borough Council wishes to express its thanks and appreciation to John Bud Herency for all of his efforts and commitment in performing his duties over the past 11 years, now therefore be it resolved by the Borough Council of the Borough of Phoenixville that John Bud Herency is recognized and publicly acknowledged for his commitment and efforts in performing his duties, and further does offer their best wishes in his future endeavors. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Congratulations and thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, council, for appreciating and recognizing. I appreciate that. And you're supposed to say, I appreciate you appreciating me. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of a resolution authorizing the submission of a round of 27 municipal grant program application for Chester County Commissioners.
Motion by Mr. Prednick, second by Mr. Dalton. On the motion, Mr. Crack.
I just need to let all of council, I explained in the Recreation Committee meeting, to be eligible for this particular funding, the county requires there be a open space dedication of certain lands. That's their sort of rules that we have to adhere to. The idea came about that we have Nattle Field that is by name, but we could enhance the opportunity of this grant application by committing basically CCRs, covenants, conveyance, and restrictions on the two parcels that make up what would be Pat Nattle Field in the future by committing it to recreation purposes and open space only. I don't see that as an issue. We acquired the properties from THP back in 2008 specifically as open space. We have a name as a park, and so it meets both of those conditions. So just know that if you approve this resolution, to be entitled to the 25% grant match, that's the commitment of the borough, and we would do the appropriate documents to get us there. So,
Mr. Prednick?
So the grant, I'm trying to understand, it says 198,000, or am I reading a different one? 75% match, is it?
the grant, the borough is in for, I believe it's the 198 and or whatever the number is, I'm sorry. The borough is responsible for 198,750, and the grant is 75%, 25% of the total cost. If you recall, I think
Okay.
the total cost of the lighting was around 250, 260,000. So
So we put up 75% and the grant puts up 25?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, we will be applying in April, I believe it is, for DCNR, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, C2P2 grant. It's a community grant. It's what we received last year for the Montclair Bridge portion of the Schuylkill River Trail. We would be eligible for that, and both our match and if we were to get this grant, we can use them to match the DCNR's money and vice versa. So on a best case scenario, we're only 25% in hard cash for the lighting. Worst case scenario, we don't get it. And in this case, it would be 25% money from the county, 75% from the borough.
And then we're using the two parcels for that field. Will there be some sort of formal dedication process to dedicate that as a park, or?
Yes, there's I've done this in the past with when those of you that may recall, when Friendship Field was in fact owned by the fire company and then it transferred over, there DCNR monies and county monies were involved in that process. We had to do the same thing. We had to dedicate through CCRs what Friendship Field would be used for.
Does that dedication of that field come back through council for approval of that field, or?
Yes, okay. It's a formal process.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of a resolution authorizing the submission of a community revitalization program grant application to Chester County Commissioners.
Motion by Mr. Richter, second by Ms. Mayo. On the motion, Mr. Crack, a little background, if you would.
Sure. This application is through the CRP. We call it CRP Community Revitalization Program of Landscapes 21st Century Fund from the County Commissioners. We are looking to replace the water lines, the water mains on Star Street from Monavon to Nutt Road, and then 2nd Avenue from Main Street to, from Star to Main Street. The total project cost is upwards of $800,000 when you take in everything that's included. Our match piece to this will be the cost of the milling and overlaying of the streets and the engineering costs. When we did the factor of this is a 75-25 the other way around, where we are only required to put up 25% and they bring 75%. The $590,000 represents the ask of Chester County for the replacement of those water lines.
Thank you, Mr. Crack. On the motion, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Take a motion to consider approval of a resolution to appoint Tax Collection Committee, TCC delegates to the Chester County Tax Collection Committee.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Bregnick. I'll give it to Mr. Bowers. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Moving on to item 11, reports of committees, boards, and commissions. Planning Commission. I don't think there's anything there. Seeing none. Regional Planning.
Nothing Phoenixville related happened in Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you. Harb.
Got a couple of things here. I'm going to bundle 1 and 3 in my first motion. So I'll make a motion to approve the sign request for 31 Bridge Street as recommended by the HARB action memo of February 3rd, 2015, and approve the sign request for 243 Bridge Street as approved, recommended by the HARB action memo of February 3rd, 2015.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Ms. Mayo. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Prednick.
So I apologize if I'm missing something, but looking at the application for 31 Bridge Street, I don't know that I see a sign request. It looks more to me like they start off build to apartment addition on the rear.
As I just read it, that sometimes gets messed up on the agenda. It's actually I should have checked that beforehand. It's,
Okay,
they're adding a couple apartments, stucco to match, the existing with the neighbors and everything. The windows say the same, but they're replaced by vinyl.
okay. So I just wanted to go for the record, that's not a sign request. Okay. And then the other point that was brought up here by the HARB was was submitted by the applicant with the requirement of non-white vinyl windows. So I don't know if that's an amendment to their application, but just want to make sure that that goes through as well.
I'm sorry,
The HARB put on there, it said by the applicant with the requirement of non-white vinyl windows.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it was just an addition to the,
okay,
to what their application was. We were just being very specific.
okay, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prednick. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, this one I'm not going to make a motion for. Someone else can if they want to, but I do want to explain that there is something out there for 202 Bridge Street. And it did pass HARB 4-2. I was one of the people against it. And it's something that it seems it's against a lot of the rules that we have in HARB. One of the things is they're taking out entranceways. I think it's 2 doors. And, you know, I mean, I guess it's up to you what you guys think of it, but I don't think it actually goes through our HARB recommendations at all.
Why did it pass? Why did it go through our?
Because people showed up and talked about it, and it seemed like it might work, but the thing is, strictly if you read the rule on HARB, it is completely not allowed. So, good.
Do you have that specific rule that it's going against versus what
Yeah,
it's
do you have
doing?
that? I forwarded that to you. Do you have that at all?
Yeah, I believe so. I'll see if I can get that, Mr. Kuznar. To the point I was going to make, I had some discussion with Mr. Bolker about who sits on HARB about this particular property, and I think he made some very good points looking at the historical value and construction that existed at one point in that location. To make that a contiguous storefront, which is basically what this is doing, is tying that space forever until future construction to a contiguous storefront, where right now there is historical value in separate storefronts in that particular area. I don't see any reason, looking at what they're trying to do with that space, that they can't work with what is there. There are plenty spaces on Bridge Street where there's multiple doors, and some of the doors are not in use. I think this drastically changes the look and feel, the historical value, which is what HARB is supposed to analyze, and I believe they rightly turned this down going through HARB.
Mr. Prednick?
I mean, I agree with Mr. Eicherter's analysis of it and his perspective. It's the same thing that I had. I just would like to question HARB as far as why are they not looking at these things and why are they missing this and sending this back to us? I mean, I
Well,
think
they're thinking about making other concessions, saying that they're not going to actually change that, and they will save things that they could put back there.
I know.
But, you know,
No, but
I don't
rules-
know, it didn't convince me, but it convinced most of the people on HARB.
yeah, I mean, rules are rules. I mean, if that's
That's how I
what the
felt
rules
about
are,
it.
and I mean, I think it should go back to HARB and they can review it again.
Okay.
Ms. Mayo?
I believe that the chair of HARB is here. Can we have his input? Are we allowed to do that?
Sure. If that's what council would like to hear at this point.
I agree with Ms. Mayo.
Sure.
Do you need me to sign in too?
Please.
Somebody stole your pen. Okay. Oh. I'm Brian Slater, Chairman of HARB. HARB, as Dana pointed out, reviewed this applicant. The guidelines, they are not rules as such. They are guidelines, and HARB does discourage filling in doorways and entrances along the main street. However, years ago, that particular building did have a storefront that went all the way down. So, historically speaking, it'd be hard to say you can't have a great big long storefront, but at the same time, our guidelines tell us that we prefer that those entrances not be filled in. So, at one point, it was a big storefront. As the shops got divided up, it got into 4 smaller shops. So then the entrances and the alcoves were then put in, which Harb actually recommended back when those changes happened. But at this point, as far as Harb goes, going back to a continuous storefront would not be against the rules. It's just going against the guidelines that we work by.
Any questions for Mr. Slater? Mr. Bowers?
Perhaps not a question, but, and I don't, does anyone have access to any either renderings or photographs of this property prior to its conversion to what appears to be individual storefronts?
I believe, yes, I believe, Mr. Crack.
Mr. Bowers, I saw a photo when it was a Woolworth store. It was actually a postcard from before the 1900s. That there?
And I think the difference on that particular picture is the bump out that does not exist today. Part of what Mr. Bolker was saying was a lot of the stores on Bridge Street have that display case type feel, and that's what existed in this Woolworths picture. And to his point, you know, we've already kind of regressed from that, and let's not regress anymore, I guess.
Okay. Mr. Dalton?
I've actually linked, Mr. Director, a picture of the SW Woolworth store in downtown Phoenixville, if you guys want to take a look at it.
We just did. We passed it around. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Slater? Thank you, Mr. Slater.
Thank you.
Mr. Prednick?
I believe we have the owner or the applicant here. Would anybody object to having them come up and be able to speak? I know they spoke up before, but.
No, I think that would be a good idea at this point.
Shouldn't we get a
Point-
motion
yeah,
if we're
point
gonna
of
discuss
order.
this like this?
Yes. Okay. Seeing no motion on the floor, we'll discontinue the conversation.
So what would our policy, should we reject it, or should we just let it just go back to Harb? Would it go back to Harb? I mean, what should we be doing here?
Based on the information that I see here, final action has to be taken by April 2nd. So you could not do anything tonight. You certainly would have to do something in March, either a denial or an approval, or if you don't do anything, it's going to be a deemed approval in April.
I'm going to make a motion to so we can even continue this. I'm going to make a motion to reject the request for 202 Bridge Street.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Richter. Mr. Kuznar?
And just to be clear, this is sending it back to Harb.
No,
It's not-
this is a rejection.
Just rejecting it, but I'm sure it'll come back to us.
Mr. Bowers?
You know, I think in light of what was brought to our attention, both by Harb itself and by the picture of the former Woolworths, I can't help but feel that, really the recommendation ought to be for the applicant to, if they're going to lean on the fact that that once was a contiguous building, then perhaps come back to HARB with a drawing, with a design that reflects the former Warwoolers, not what it is, not what it is today.
Mr. Kuznar.
I feel that the applicant, if it is in some way sent back to HARB, if they want to continue pursuing something that is in accordance with HARB, they wouldn't have to refile application fees or anything like that.
Well, I think that's a separate motion apart from.
I didn't make a motion, I was making a point that I would like something like that for the applicant, if they're willing to work with HARB ordinances.
I think that would be appropriate if you wanted to make that motion after this motion has been disposed of.
Okay.
Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the rejection? Aye. Opposed? No. So can we see a show of hands?
Could you do a roll call?
Yeah, well, for clarification, let's do a roll call.
Mr. Bowers? No. Mr. Dalton?
No.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
Mr. Richter? Yes. Mr. Kuznar?
No.
Ms. Mayo? Yes. Mr. Prednick?
Yes.
Mr. Kowalewski?
Abstain. The applicant is a client of the law firm where I'm employed, although we don't represent him on this issue.
Say motion passes 4-3.
431.
4-3-1. That would be the abstain, yes.
With that, I would suggest that the applicant work with HARB to the extent possible. Anything further from HARB? Okay. Moving on to item 12, council action referred from committee, police personnel.
We didn't have a meeting, so there's no action to report.
Thank you. Parks and Rec.
Mr. President, before I dive into the Parks and Rec, I do want to see if Mr. Kuznar wanted to bring back the motion that you had been discussing about the fee waiver.
For the applicant.
Correct.
Then if I could, I would make a motion to waive the fees for the applicant so he chooses to decide to apply it again.
That's correct, but I don't hear a second. Motion by Mr. Kuznar, second by Mr. Bowers to waive the HARB application fees on a reapplication. Any discussion on it? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I think we'll need a roll call on that as well.
Mr. Dalton?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan? No. Mr. Richter? Yes. Mr. Kuznar?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo? No. Mr. Prednick?
No.
Mr. Bowers? Yes. Mr. Kowalewski?
Abstain for the same reason.
Motion passes 4-3-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. For Parks and Rec, I'd like to, if council so agrees, I'd like to bundle items 1, 2, 3, and 4 for temporary community events under item B for Parks and Rec. So I'll make a motion to do so.
Motion by Mr. Richter, second by Ms. Mayo. On the motion?
All of them, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
I also would like to make a motion in regards to the 4th of July fireworks celebration. Staff has recommended a group called D&M Fireworks for the 2015 display in the amount of $9,000, which is the same as the previous vendor we used. So I'll make that motion to utilize D&M Fireworks for 2015.
Motion by Mr. Richter, second by Ms. Dugan. On the motion, Mr. Bowers?
Just got asked, though. Should there be an application for a temporary community event before that?
Technically, yes, but I would
Okay.
submit that we'll catch up to the.
There's a change of venue, and that's why I asked.
The change of venue is the same. It's still Friendship Field.
Oh,
We had a discussion previously about another location until we realized how many power lines were straddling both sides of the road. Kind of took it out of the equation very quickly.
got it.
So just to be clear, because I was going to ask this later, the downtown location is out the window.
It is,
Thank
correct. Yeah, so it would be at Friendship Field.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Anything else from Parks and Rec? Thank you. Moving on to Finance.
I'm going to bundle 1 through 8 of this. I will read them for your edification and delight. I'll make a motion to approve the 2014 prepaids dated 11/9/2014 to 12/11/2014 in the amount of $529,905.74. Approve the 2014 prepaid ACH 11/30/2014 in the amount of $1,403,715.48. The approval of the 2014 prepaids dated 12/12/2014 to 1/10/2015 in the amount of $485,325.41. Approve the 2014 prepaids ACH 12/31/2014 in the amount of $2,957.45. Approve the 2015 prepaids dated 12/12/2014 to 1/10/2015 in the amount of $277,422.95. The budget increase request, 2015-02, for $162,926 from General Capital Project Fund to Public Works Capital Projects for the new sanitation truck. We've discussed this before. The budget increased 2015-03 of $2,000 from fund balance to finance SEC post-insurance compliance for annual service agreement. And finally, the budget increase request 2015-04 for $2,550 from fund balance to facilities, Borough Hall access control for Tyco Simplex Grinnell 3-year service agreement.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Ms. Mayo. That was quite a mouthful of a motion. Mr. Prednick.
Just a question, Mr. Crank. Number 8, does Tyco Simplex Grinnell, I know they're mostly a security company, do they have anything to do with our AC contract?
No, that's two-hour train.
Okay.
Aren't we talking about these things, pretty much? No, AC, air conditioning. Oh, that's what I'm not talking about that. I was wondering, isn't that the situation, one of the things we were talking about, for making it a 3-year agreement rather than a 1-year agreement? I thought you were there for that. Okay.
Any further comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Anything else from Finance?
Nope.
Thank you. Infrastructure?
Nothing. I just would comment that in the January 20 meeting, we did review the survey completed by Matchpoint Water Asset Management, and very excited about that, and certainly looking forward to staff digesting all the findings and incorporating recommendations to infrastructure and broadly to council.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Economic Development?
Yes, we did have one thing, one agenda item, we voted to waive construction permit fees for the Colonial Theater. All of us collectively felt that the Colonial has done a lot for the community in sparking interest in the community, and felt that it was best to waive the construction permit fees. So I'll make that motion.
Second that.
Motion by Ms. Mayo, second by Ms. Dugan. Mr. Kuznar?
On the motion, I'd met with Ms. Foote discussing this issue, and I was going to get some information about the fees themselves, how much they were. Are they located within the packet, how much the fees are?
They're unknown at this point.
Okay. No estimate, no guesstimate.
Mr. Crack?
I think Ms. Foote is here.
Ms. Foote? Maybe you can come up and shed some light.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for your time. I saw some propaganda. So that's our annual report coming around, and I thank you for the introduction. I think all of you are aware the theater's role, at least partially, in the revitalization in the last 15 years. We're expected to triple our attendance with this expansion. Some of you have been through the building. If you haven't, I'm happy to walk you through and let you know what's going on. This is the construction piece for 2 phases is about $6.3 million. So the fees we're talking about is in the area of $126,000. That's a huge number for us and actually represents some of our major gifts as we have been working the last year to raise this money. We are not at our goal yet. So I'm just hoping that you would take my questions, but entertain considering this. I do want to mention, I had a great conversation with Michael, and we every year give away over 1,000 tickets to nonprofits to help them to raise money themselves in auction items and such. And in the last couple of years have given over 300 free tickets a year to some of the nonprofits who give them directly to the families that they work with in. So we try to give back. So it's not only the economic impact we bring, but we think we're good community partners, and this would be really a big, huge help. So anyone have any questions? Sure.
I just want to clarify, did I hear 126,000 in fees?
It's, 2% of the construction. That does not include third-party fees, by the way, and we have talked to BIA, and they've given us a reduction that's been very generous, so we appreciate that. But this, it's 2%.
Mr. Kuznar?
Do we fall conflict to setting any precedents, or, we did it here, but so now we have to do it there, or you did it there, you won't do it for us, type of thing? Do you understand what I'm asking?
No, I do, and I don't believe, it's a precedent on some level, but I don't think it's a decision that council can make the decision on a case-by-case basis.
I just think this is, I'm not obviously particularly good at waiving fees for anybody, but on this situation, I kind of feel this is a local treasure. And this is something that, people always talk about. To help to support it in any way so that it can get, totally upgraded. I really think we're going to be thankful that we did it.
Ms. Mayo?
And also, the Colonial, I really believe was the initial spark that, started the rest of the revitalization of Phoenixville. Some people saw what was going on with the Colonial and brought their own businesses into town and own restaurants and everything. But it is a community treasure. It's not like we have another Colonial to waive fees for. It's not like we're going to have another huge project like this to waive fees for either. And quite frankly, we're not going to get it. We wouldn't get it any other way. So, I think it's important that we do this.
Mr. Prednick?
I have a real conflict in the sense that everything the Colonial does is awesome. We go there constantly with our kids, and we do a lot of things there. And I've seen the plans, I've seen the building, and you guys are definitely on the right path and doing a great thing for the township, for the borough. But I have a hard time in general, you guys know probably from past history, just waiving fees. I mean, Mr. Kolowski said that it's sort of setting a precedence, but it's not, because we have our ability to judge on a case-by-case basis. But to me, this is setting a precedence. We're saying that a nonprofit came through, they had a great plan, and because we believe it's a good thing for the borough, we're waiving the fees. But another nonprofit can come by wanting to do something that they think is awesome, and then we're in the same place again. So it's a very subjective decision based on that moment. And I wouldn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we have another nonprofit says, oh, you did it for them, why can't you do it for me? Is my project not good enough as theirs? And that's the only hard thing for me to vote no on this, is because I really want to support what you guys do, and I wish there was another way to give you guys breaks that wouldn't be setting a precedence.
I will just raise the issue that we have waived, this council has waived fees before, and then it is now our policy, or policy of some, not to waive fees. So we have changed our stance before on waiving of fees. Mr. Richter.
Ms. Foote, what is the nonprofit status of Colonial? Is it a nonprofit organization?
Yes, yes, we are a 501c3, IRS designated nonprofit organization. The nonprofit owns and operates the theater, so we own the building, we run all the programming. And we own the building next door to us, 225.
Ms. Mayo?
All the money that you're raising for the construction is donations, correct?
It is, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bowers?
Just one thing that caught my eye in your letter, and I'm not trying to be particularly critical, because I absolutely do recognize the economic value and direct economic value that the Colonial and its expansion represents to the business district and the surrounding community. But I wasn't sure I understood the statement where it said the expansion will allow ACT to enable ACT to repay the anchor building grant.
You know, as I read that later, I thought this may not be clear to people who weren't involved.
So
like
it put in my
years
mind,
back.
was the anchor building, repaying the anchor building grant ever in jeopardy?
No, but it'd certainly make it easier when we've tripled our business and.
Understood that it.
Yes, so that was badly worded, I would say.
And where,
Because
in what year?
we did, just so you know, is we timed when repayment would begin based on when we finished our original mortgages. So it was never going to add to our operating expense at any significant level.
Okay. And just, do you know about what year we are in the anchor building grant?
I knew it. 6 plus 15 is 21 is when we started.
2006 is when you got the
Yes.
grant.
So it was 15 years, so it's 2021.
21.
It was very generous. I don't deny that at all. And it really helped. For those of you who may not have been around, that part of the construction opened up the balcony and we were able to reseat the theater. And that really pushed the concerts, which pushed the numbers, which pushed the weekends. I mean, it really did. It increased our numbers quite a bit.
Anything further from Ms. Foote? Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Any further comment on it, on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-1, with Mr. Prednick being the no. Anything further from economic development? Thank you. Policy?
Mr. Dalton, like me to address it?
I was going to make a statement just beforehand. Is that okay?
Mr. Kuznar?
Yeah, I wanted to make a statement after the vote that we just had. Moving forward, if we're going to be waiving fees up to the tune of $126K, I would like it just to be a little more off the cuff. I don't know if anyone here agrees with me, but a little less off the cuff and a little more detail. Because that is a lot of money. That's $126,000 we just waived, and there was no explaining where that money would have went, or, you know, so in the future, it's just kind of a split of the moment decision, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Kuznar. Mr. Prednick?
No, do you want to read the policy ones?
Mr. Dolan indicated that you were going to be reading those.
I will gladly read them on behalf of Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Bowers?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure, and just to maybe clarify a bit, and the manager certainly would do a much better job than I, but there is no waiver of any water sewer connection fees. There are no waiver of any direct cost for construction inspection. So there are no waiver of direct cost to the borough, as I understood it.
Correct. It comes under the heading of, we didn't account for it in the budget. It's not in the budget, so it has no impact on the budget, other than if we were to receive unknown inspection fees, then that would go to the to fund balance at the end of the year.
Thank you. Mr. Kuznar?
And just, all those inspection fees would have gone to the borough, correct? I mean, we can't waive fees that wouldn't have been coming straight to us. They're all coming straight to us. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and just, the first one, make a motion to consider a policy authorizing the mayor to participate in council meetings remotely.
Motion by Mr. Prednick, second by Ms. Mayo. On the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Sorry, didn't jump in quick enough there. I just want a little bit of clarification on this one, because I think Allison, or I think it was Allison, made the point last time that the mayor's participation remotely doesn't really impact the vote or anything. So I'm just trying to figure out what we're gaining, or what gratification are we getting by this, throwing another policy at this?
I mean, my take on it is that we're allowing the mayor to participate, hear comments, and be part of the meeting, which is what we allowed council to do with the previous policy.
If I can just clarify quickly, it's essentially just the mayor listening in to the meeting, giving his mayor's report, because although the Borough Code specifically states that if the mayor is not here and there's a tie and a motion, you have to schedule a special meeting for him to break a tie. There's no veto if he's on the phone. It is essentially him being able to listen into the meeting, make any comments, and give his mayor's report. There's no voting via telephone or anything of that nature.
So participation is permitted via the phone, just not a vote?
That's correct. Council can make a policy stating that if the mayor wants to, when I say participate, it's basically just him on the phone listening to the council meeting and commenting if he wants to. By participate does not mean voting. It does not mean vetoing any ordinances. It doesn't mean him taking any official action that the Borough Code gives him the authority to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Prednick?
Just for my clarification, what would happen if we had a 4-4 vote and the mayor was dialed in?
You'd have to schedule a meeting between 5 and 10 days to have the mayor consider that motion.
If this goes to a tie, is he a conflict of interest?
Yes, he would be a conflict of interest. No. I don't think, a motion is a motion, so I take that back. I don't think that he doesn't directly benefit from it. I mean,
There's no financial benefit that would create a conflict. Any other comment on the motion? Mr. Prednick?
I mean, I know that this is for mayor participating in the council meetings, and I wasn't there for the policy discussions, but if we're allowing council to participate and vote remotely, why not let the mayor? I mean, I don't think the mayor has any intention to miss every meeting and dial in from home, but I don't understand why we would treat him differently than the rest of us. And maybe somebody can enlighten me and I missed something.
I believe that and I'll ask the solicitor for clarification on this, but I don't believe that the Borough Code permits the mayor to vote.
right, he cannot vote, right.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other comment? Mr. Bowers?
And I use this term in policy, and I think what we're kind of doing is codifying chamber rules. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase this, and there are a lot of things that well, there are several things that we have established as our procedures that really are kind of our chamber rules, and I think this just formalizes the mayor participation remotely as one of our chamber rules.
Any other comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Number 2, consider making a policy to only require a public hearing prior to the enactment of zoning or sound ordinance per the MPC.
A second?
Motion by Mr. Brednick, second by Mr. Bowers. Mr. Brednick?
So I know I made the motion just in Jeremy's favor of him not being here. I don't support this. I don't understand why we would want to take away the transparency that we're giving the public and removing public hearings from ordinances. I know that we have public hearings that might be considered minutia if they're just signs and other small things. And we've been here many times where we open the hearing, nobody shows up, close the hearing, we move on, and it's just a waste of money and time. What I would like to see is more clarification in this as far as which specific ordinance types don't need that public hearing anymore. So maybe it's signs, maybe it's the speed changes, and clarify what those small things are, because I would hate for the public to lose an opportunity to come up and speak. And I know they can come up in the beginning, but I think it takes away from the public's ability to speak on a specific public hearing or an ordinance.
I just wanted to say I completely agree with that.
So is that a motion to table? Because that would be the appropriate thing to, and then send it back to committee.
I'll make the motion to table number 2, consider policy to require a public hearing prior to the enactment of zoning and saldo, and send that back to policy.
I don't know of any reason you can't.
You can, well, if I can just clarify one thing. In other municipalities represent, if council wants to allow public participation prior to an ordinance, it can do so without calling it a public hearing and having opening and closing the hearings, just to put that on the table.
And that's a good point. I think that's fodder for discussion at the policy committee, because that might be the policy that comes out, is that we invite public comment during each ordinance without the need for a public hearing. But right now, we have a motion to table by Mr. Prednick, seconded by Ms. Dugan. Any comment on the motion to table? Seeing none, all those in favor of tabling the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. We'll table that. And, Mr. Dalton, if you can add that back to your policy agenda. Mr. Crack is noting that as well. Thank you.
Okay, the next one, number 3, consider scheduling or make a motion to consider scheduling and advertising a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 15, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Part 4, General Parking Regulations, Section 15-406, Handicap Parking Zones of the Code of the Borough of Phoenixville.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Prednick, second by Mr. Bowers. I will make the comment up front that that motion assumes that that council had approved the previous item on the agenda. So what I would suggest is, since we don't have that policy in place right now, that potentially the motion be amended to schedule and advertise a public hearing on the ordinance.
Okay, I'll amend the motion to schedule a hearing to consider the scheduling and advertising of proposed ordinance.
Is the second okay with that?
Yes, second.
Thank you,
Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. On the amended motion, hearing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Number 4, I'd like to make a motion to consider scheduling and advertising a hearing for the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 25, Trees of the Code of the Borough of Phoenixville.
Motion by Mr. Prednick, second by Ms. Mayo. On the motion, Mr. Prednick.
Did I miss something? But I could not find this in my packet anywhere. Did we get it? I searched everything for trees. I could not find any of the word trees, any of the numbers.
If not, we'll make sure that, Mr. Crack will make sure that you get it for next month's public hearing, assuming this passes. in advance, well in advance. Mr. Kuznar?
Can it be summarized?
Mr. Crack?
It took us 4 years to get here. There are, what this originally started out as, if some of you that were here, is about 5 years ago, 7 to 5 years ago, Borough Council struggled every year putting funding towards the maintenance of trees, and we were woefully behind in that process. Council then got behind the program, and in that effort, the ordinance was written to basically remove the trees as a borough tree and turn trees, those street trees, back over to the residents. It would be their responsibility to trim, take down, and what have you. Subsequently, council, though, has, for the past 5 years, actually put a budget together for the maintenance of the trees. We're now caught up, and we're actually now proactively going after certain takedowns and certain trimmings throughout the borough as need be. With that in mind, the policy committee vetted this thing back and forth over the many years and called out the things that it still needs to have done, which is there are trees that are not necessarily borough trees, but there's the responsibility to trim them over top of roadways, trim them over top of sidewalks, keep them from being planted and established in line of sight to stop signs or signs or street lights and things of that sort. So the crux of what you have now is really all of the changes that are still necessary, but retaining the ownership of the street trees by the borough.
Thank you, Mr. Crack. Any further discussion? Seeing none on the motion to schedule a public hearing, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Moving on with item 13, public participation. I'll open up the second round of public participation and invite members of the public to come forward. Please identify yourselves, identify whether you're a borough resident, sign in, and keep comments to 5 minutes. Seeing no public participation, we'll close the second round of public participation and move on to staff reports. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening, prior to council's meeting, presented council with the annual 2014 police report. If any questions or concerns, feel free to contact myself or the chief. The only other thing I want to mention is dodging the bullet of that snowstorm last month. A snow emergency was declared early in the morning, around 9 in the morning, after consultation with the parties involved, to be effective at noon. What happened was we eventually dodged the bullet, but we ended up giving out a few tickets to residents here. It wasn't for lack of trying to get the word out. Attempted all throughout social media, all throughout our borough websites. The police officers in the evening through their PA systems announced as they were traveling down the snow emergency routes. The decision was made not to tow any vehicles on that particular night. And, you know, I kind of felt bad that we had to give out tickets, but, you know, there was just some people who just outright refused to move. So I did field a few phone calls, and after I explained, you know, people were reluctant but accepting of the fact. And if we have snow in the forecast, I guess what I would ask is if you're living on that snow emergency route, check out your borough website, talk with your neighbors. If you see that cars are being moved, definitely move your car. So, like I said, we're fortunate we're not living in Boston, but I also want to comment that our streets guys, Brian Watson, are doing a great job with a lot of compliments on staying on top of the black ice, et cetera. So that's it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anything for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move on to the manager's report. Mr. Crack?
Yes, I have two items, one which was in your packet and one which we only really finalized earlier today, and I've put on your table, and I apologize up front for, it just took a lot of time to get the information that we needed for the second item. But the first item is, as you are all aware, we're working together with the interested party to acquire or swap the property at the Borough Hall. Unfortunately, it was so in front of me, I just didn't recognize that it was there. We took out the underground storage tanks previously on the site for the fuel oil. For whatever reasons, I just made an assumption that the boilers and everything were running on natural gas. We actually have a underground storage tank for fuel oil for the Borough Hall that we left in place when we vacated it moving here. In order to help the interested party move forward with their grant application to PHFA, they need to know that tank's going to be taken out of there. And what I've gotten here for you is the cost of taking that tank out and getting the certification to do that. Down the road, if there's any other issues, as the owner of the property, we would still have to remove the tank and do any cleanup if there was such a thing. But at this juncture, it's important that we, even for our own benefit, to get that tank taken care of, get those oils out of there, because that building has been shut down for 18 months already. It's not a good thing to have a UST on your property, especially a 3,000-gallon one. So the request is that, and this would go against the expense of added to the things that are included in the old Borough Hall, but it's a $2,720 request, and I think it was important to get it to here to council tonight versus waiting another month at finance.
Mr. Bowers?
Council President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the expenditure of $2,720 to EMG remediation services for the removal of an underground storage tank at 140 Church Street.
Second. Motion by Mr. Bowers, second by Mr. Parednik on the motion. Mr. Richter.
Mr. Crack, how do you envision there's site remediation necessary at both sites that are in question as part of the whole plan? I'm hesitant even at $2,700 to say, okay, we're ready to start remediating this site for you when there's remediation that needs to take place at the other site that we're looking at.
I would not consider this remediation.
Well, it has to be done to be.
Remediation would be if there were contamination of the soils below and around a tank or in the ground. What this is actually taking a preventative measure. We should have actually done this as soon as we left the building, is to get rid of the fossil fuels that are in the tank and not have the potential for cold weather or anything else to destroy the tanks. There's water now that gets into these tanks because of sweating and what have you. It's a bad place for us. But for the applicant, it just helps their application that we're taking responsibility for the tank that is ours. That's what we would be telling them by taking this tank out.
But why wouldn't they take ownership of that tank and correcting any issues with the tank, just like we will take ownership of the other property and pull any pipes and pull any rebar and et cetera that exists?
At this juncture, I don't think we're there at that part of the equation. There's just, when we get further down the road, there will be a whole level of discussion on remediation as it relates to each of those parcels. Neither one of us knows what is on the acreages at the site. What we do know is there is a tank on our site, and just prudence would say that we would take the tank out. It just so happens that they caught it in their application process because they have to submit engineering reports as to what may or may not be on the site. I got the report. I actually said, no, there is no tank on the site because we took it out already. not realizing that we had one underneath the police station.
Just for councils, so you know, council approved the agreement last meeting that had to do with the exchange. There's a paragraph in there that specifically has to do with this phase 1 remediation. And what I intend to do is talk with opposing counsel, and it specifically says there may be a tank on the property. We know now that there is a tank on the property, and that we would enter into a separate side agreement having to do with that removal and any other, you know, the soil contamination, anything else has to do with that. So this is, if council wants to approve this, the first step, but in my mind at least, this doesn't open the door unless it's approved by council to keep doing things and putting everything in an agreement that everybody knows what's going on.
But this doesn't seem like part of a side agreement. This seems like, here's a dollar value, spend the money and fix it. I'm missing that part. Where's the agreement?
Well, let me see if I can break this apart real quick. I think I'd like to extrapolate out the concept of having to do this in favor of the applicant as they're going before the PHFA. It's not necessary. We merely need to say in a very short letter that we are responsible for any tank removal or what have you. That can be done at any particular time. I still maintain, though, that we should have a solid discussion on the removal of the tank, because now that we know it's there, I still believe we should be taking it out of the ground and not opening ourselves up to a potential leak of a tank that we're not using anymore. I can extrapolate the two apart easily. A simple 2-sentence letter takes care of the PHFA problem in that we say we are responsible, which we are, and we will work with the entities to do whatever needs to be taken out of the ground, to do whatever is necessary. That's our responsibility as the property owner. Take that away, okay? We don't have to take the tank out of the ground today for that purpose, but we still need to discuss this either tonight or in Finance Committee or something in the near future and get this thing taken care of, because if it leaks into the ground, it's a much bigger problem than any $2,700 is going to be. So you can take the two apart. I made the connection. I shouldn't have made that connection. They are two separate things. I don't know if that helps you or not.
Mr. Brodnick?
I mean, I kind of see those two sides. I mean, if we put in the tank, you know, whenever we put it in, it's our responsibility to take it out. But in the same time, I question if they put in parts and materials and metals in their land, why is it not their responsibility to take it out as well?
Well, it will be.
It will be, okay. So they're going to remediate their land just as we're going to remediate ours.
The remediation of the lands is before you can move forward in development, has to occur. Who actually does it will be a part of our end agreement of sale. That's what will be in the end agreement of sale. What I'm saying is that the tank that's there today, now that I know that it's there, it's a concern. And I got a price to be able to take that out. I shouldn't have, in tonight's meeting, and I made that mistake, I shouldn't have connected it to the application by the entity that's looking to do the project that's there.
But if we approve that the funds to remove the tank, is there anything to say that we remove it, we don't need to find, we remove it, then we find out that there's more remediation needed afterwards?
We would still have to clean it up, yes. Okay. Or, in the terms of the agreement, negotiate who cleans up what.
So it seems like it might come down to the agreement. That's where it would be decided whether we have to take it out or not, and then who's responsible for remediation, whatever we find. That's all going to come down in the agreement later on.
You could, what I'm saying is you can wait that long, but I'm advising that once you know something, especially as it relates to DEP and the cleanup of that, it can be very cost prohibitive because you can't just take soils that have been contaminated and shuffle them around. You have to transport them usually to Maryland, and that's a very expensive process.
Can we have this go to finance for further discussion? And go ahead, Eddie.
I was going to do. Is there any way we can table this motion? And I'm sorry, but this really is something that really needs to go through finance. It's only an extra week.
No, and that's perfectly fine. I tried to do something that I thought was the right thing to do. I've realized by Mr. Richter's information that I shouldn't have done that, and I admit that. it still allows us to provide the information to the applicant that they need. That's not a problem because we've already got that information. Set that aside. Now I have something that I think is important for us to address. The sooner the better, but it doesn't have to be tonight. Fair enough.
Mr. Bowers?
I really can't imagine what more finance would flush out of this. It's $2,720. This is an action that needs to be done independent of other negotiations that are occurring over 140 Church Street. This is a borough responsibility at this point. It needs to be done. It's really straightforward, I see. I don't know why we are engaging in such lengthy debate. It's $2,700. Then the waiver of fees for Colonial should have gone through finance. But there wasn't an objection to that. I'm not tabling my motion, not me.
Ms. Mao?
I agree with Mr. Bowers. The fact of the matter is that it's still our property, it's still in our name, and we need to take care of a major problem, or a problem that could become a major problem if we don't take care of it ASAP. It's $2,700. Whether it was 18 months ago when we moved out or now, we still have to spend $2,700. Let's do it. Let's get this taken care of.
Mr. Richter?
I guess the part that I'm still having a hard time with is we are so far removed from being in that location. This was found by an entity that is not an entity of the borough. And now all of a sudden, with 4 days' notice, we're ready to spend $1, $10, $2,700. We're still ready to just spend that money and not look at the bigger picture, which, I'm sorry, Mr. Crack, I disagree that you have to look at this separately than part of the swap. I don't see it that way. And I'm still going to say I'm not on board for this motion.
Ms. Mao?
18 months ago when we moved out, we didn't have a swap agreement. We didn't have a buyer. We didn't know what it was going to do. If we rewind 18 months and we knew we had this tank down there, we would have still had to spend the $2,700 to get it removed. Just saying.
Any further comment? Mr. Prudnick?
I mean, I think that's the point to me, I think, is what Ms. Mayo said. I think it ultimately at the end seems like we're going to have to spend that $2,700 one way or another. I mean, I agree that we should have done about it sooner, it should go through finance and all this, but I think at the end we're going to have to spend that $2,700 anyhow, regardless of what happens. It doesn't seem like somehow we can avoid this $2,700 by getting it into the deal and making them pay for it. I think it's being a little pity. I think we should just resolve it and get it over with.
Any other comment? Seeing none, on the motion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-2. Mr. Crack?
At the risk of skewering myself even further, what you have back in in November, we had some funding that was available for wayfinding, and that was through the Skook River Trails, and this is all in my memo to you. We got the call that basically they were being pressured to no longer extend that $29,000 figure because the funder we couldn't get the funding for wayfinding. That was part of our match, and ultimately they said we need you to turn it back. Well, we have also been working towards putting in the trailhead signs and the directory signs in the downtown. So I asked the funder if they would be willing to use those dollars towards that, because we had just previously applied to the Health Foundation for $15,000 to put towards putting in trailhead signs and directory signs in the downtown. They actually liked that idea, but held on to her time commitment of it has to be done by March 31st of 2015. Very quickly, as I mentioned in committee, we put the RFP together, put it out on December 22nd, I believe it was, and held it out there until the 29th of January, so 40 days or so. There's not many people that can do the type of design, fabrication, and installation of something as unique as these types of directory signs, kiosks, if you will. There were two firms that submitted. Those are in your packet there that I'm showing you. Again, it's a unique scenario. It's not something that they carve out a pretty picture. We asked them to give us concepts of what could be done and what would the dollar figure be. When the RFPs came in, there was the two that came in. Both of them are, the one has a high number and a low number. The other one has just a flat number. Both can be done within the budget that we have, which is 59.5. The next step is after we received the RFPs in, we then went back to each of them, met with one here locally, and then had a webinar with another one, and really got into the science of here's the locations that we're looking at. 3 are on the trails. One is in downtown. This is a steel town. This is what's important to people about the heritage and what have you. We need you to make sure that your numbers are still consistent, and then after talking to them, we determined that one of them, urban design, I believe it was, got the concept that this is a unique town, that we're trying to create something that will fit within the new buildings that are being built, but also along the trails, along the Schuylkill Trail at Ashland, at the Foundry, and then up at Maury Road. The next step in the process is, if you concur, we would make an award to urban design not to exceed the budget that we have, get 3 of their designs brought back to us, get them over to you through PDFs and emails, decide on a concept that everybody can come to, and then send it out to fabrication. The problem is fabrication is the costlier of all of this. We want to make sure we've got the right design that the majority of council would be in favor of. So that's what all of that memo says, is that we're at the step of getting a firm to go into a design and see if we can get to an agreement on that design, fabricate and install it all within the budget that we have. And the numbers, I showed you the numbers there from the various grant makers and the borough's required match as part of that project. I believe the total number was 59.5. I'm not sure why I don't have it in front of me. I got it. The only the reason that we're pushing to get a response from council is obviously with 31st of March as a end of the half of the dollars and cents. I feel that, and I've talked to the grant maker about it, I feel that if we can get them into design and into fabrication, we've met the grant maker's key and core component of moving the project forward. We don't have to have it necessarily in the ground, and the fabricators don't know if they can even get it made by that March 31st, but we would have what is called substantially complete and try to get, at worst, try to get in the April timeframe. So that's all that you have in front of you, is those two packets.
I think in order to probably make a motion one way or another, I think we need to understand the deadline. It seems like it's March 31st, but what has to be completed by March 31st?
If we can be into fabrication, we're well past 50%, meaning that the 50% that the grant maker has been met. The remaining 50% would be what the borough's commitment was and what the Health Foundation's commitment was.
And if this decision was made next council, say looks like March 9th or 10th, that would not be enough time for anything in fabrication? 20 days or so?
I will tell you that the Schuylkill River Heritage Center has been pushing hard to stay on track with that March 31st. Can I get an extension? I guess I can. I'm good at groveling.
Maybe not
I guess-
maybe an extension, but if it's approved March 10th.
I guess my question to you would be, what is it that I've said and that's in the package that would cause you to have to wait 30 days above and beyond what's already there? There's two companies, there's no more companies involved. The not to exceed number is noted. We've talked and communicated with the firm that either firm can do the job, but we think one firm got the historical heritage of the community and would do a better design, and that it's going to stay within budget. What more would you need that you're going to read between now and March 10th?
So, I mean, I'll give my example. My take on it is that when we did the fencing here, we were able to get a picture of the fence. We said, this is the fence that's going in. This is how much funding we need to put in that fence. We knew exactly what we were approving. With this, I know that each one provided sort of a mock-up of what they could do, at least IDS did. And Urban Design provided some examples. I didn't see in the Urban Design Plan a mock-up of what they would be presenting the borough with. And that's my concern. In addition to the range that they're offering this at, I know we're going to propose a not to exceed number to them, but my concern is we approve this, we go back to them, we say, okay, look, this is our funds, and coincidentally, they can make a sign for exactly that amount, rather than us getting the best price. And IDS already came at $44,000. I mean, I would like to, if we do have to approve this tonight, I would say we make that not to exceed number $45,000, and make Urban Design compete with what IDS provided. If we're going to go back to them and say, this is the budget we have, now give us a design of what it could look like.
I'll do whatever council asks me to do. You know that. So if that's the call, I don't know if I can get there. If I can't get there, then obviously we're waiting until March 10th. I'm sorry, I saw Mr. Richter first.
Just as a general comment, I'm having a hard time with items like this that I don't necessarily get to see in the packet and have committee-type discussion, which I don't think should happen on the floor. So for that reason, I agree with Shai. I think this needs to go to committee so that we can hash out a discussion. Thank you.
So,
Fair enough.
do you need a motion to send it to finance, or just bring it to finance?
You don't do anything on the floor, it's going to finance.
Okay.
Well, it's going to, yeah, finance.
Ms. Mayo?
Don't you think, I mean, putting the other company up against another company, that really puts Gene in a really tough spot. I mean, I think. He's going to have to, I'm not saying that you can't do it, I mean, you can't get it done, but at the same time, like, that's a pretty tough spot to be in. You know, what was the other one's quote or whatever? 44, and what was?
They give us a range of 54,490 to 106,000. So I mean, you have one company that's providing a fixed price at something, and you have another one that's giving you a range.
Is it apples to apples, though? I mean,
We don't know, because I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, maybe based on discussions you guys had, but it's not what's presented in the proposal.
It is not apples to apples. And let me just make sure that, you know, I'm fairly confident I can get a little bit of a push on the calendars. If I can get more information by the March 10th meeting, I'd rather do that than be pushing you into a drop that you don't want to be. I don't want to paint you into that box unnecessarily. I'd rather see if I can get the push from the funder for another month, see if I can get some more design element. What I saw with IDS is a standard sign that they adhered to steel heritage through coloration, and pretty much that's it. If you looked at their portfolio, all they've taken is the types of materials and put a more steel heritage type colorization to it. What we got from Urban was understanding what materials could be used as well. So in fairness to you and your time, and I know that we've got a lot more, I'm more than happy to go back to the track and get it here for the March 10th
I
meeting.
guess one of the concerns that I have is there was a beautiful wayfinding presentation, and we saw signs of every shape, color, size, etc. There was direction, and I look at this, there's no direction.
I'm missing your point.
The memorandum that you have here about the information centers and tying it to wayfinding, I think what some of us are lacking, not everybody had the privilege of seeing what the original wayfinding had in it.
Right.
And a lot of what I'm hearing is a desire to see that type of detail that's not in this part.
And I think the difference is that in the wayfinding, the design was the design that was done was paid for the design. We haven't allocated funds to this company to specifically design our kiosk. That's the difference.
But neither of these companies were willing to give us some even examples other than that one that's on there.
At the time, it's a very stodgy field for these companies. There's not many of them out there that actually do this. That's why I'm saying, rather than debate this back and forth, in fairness to time, I'm more comfortable saying, you know what, I'd rather try to get you what you're looking for. I'll get what I need to get from the funding folks and try to move this forward so that when you come back in March, I've got you as much as I can possibly get from the companies, and then see if we can get a decision then. It's, you know me, I don't like to carry these things on very much on the floor. If in fairness to you, I don't want a bad vote. I want a good vote if we're going to do something. So that's my 59.5 worth.
Your what?
Yes.
Mr. Bowers?
Thank you, Councilman. I think John raised a point I'd like to make further, is that seem to have gotten so far away from wayfinding and that conceptual design that we were presented. And I'm, I guess, now looking at this and saying, where'd all that effort go? Because what is, are we not incorporating those conceptual elements that were just established through all that wayfinding work into the trailheads?
Well, that's why when we sat down with Urban, we sat down specifically with the exit document. We didn't utilize the pieces of the pylons, because I'm not necessarily sure that this council wants to move forward with the pylon concept. But the detail that was in the actual four sign scenario, the way those were designed, we asked them to specifically adhere to that in their design concept. Urban felt that they could get to that direction. InDesign came back with a modular version of what they already have within their portfolio. Why? Because it's what they do.
Understood. I understood. But were we not leading either company to a price based on our wayfinding concepts?
That's what we're trying to do.
Well, we just seem to be getting far astray, and I don't know. Maybe I'm far astray of what were the wayfinding concepts. And
that's why I'm pulling the reins back and saying, let's. There's no further debate. I got the message. I know what I need to do. I'm comfortable moving to the next step and trying to get something back to you.
Yeah, I think the discussions has been had, and we don't have a motion on the floor anyway, so we should move on from the issue. Anything further, Mr. Crack?
No.
Code directors, public works, fire chiefs, And the finance director's report are in the packet. Fire department liaison, Mr. Dalton, do you have anything? Nothing. Okay. There is need for an executive session to discuss personnel litigation and real estate. We will be coming back from that. So I'll take a motion to move into executive session. I'll give that to Mr. Richter, second to Ms. Mayo. I apologize. All those in favor? Aye. So I'll note that council moved into executive session at 8:38, yes. All right, note that Phoenixville Borough Council is coming back from executive session at 10:03. Is there any action that anyone wishes to bring to the floor? Mr. Richter? Oh, Ms. Dugan?
I will make a motion to schedule a special council meeting on March 3rd at 6 o'clock for the purpose of interviewing solicitors.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Ms. Mayo. Since this is not on this agenda, I'll open up a round of public participation on this issue. Seeing no public participation, we'll close that round. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0 as Mr. Dalton is no longer with us.
And my second motion was to schedule a special council meeting for March 31st at 6 o'clock for the purpose of interviewing labor attorneys.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Ms. Mayo. Again, I'll open up a round of public participation on this issue as it was not on the agenda. Seeing no public participation, we'll close that. Any council comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Richter.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to codify the results of the fire investigation report.
Motion by Mr. Richter, second by Ms. Mayo. On the motion, open up a round of public participation on this motion. Seeing none, I'll close that round of public participation. Any council discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.